Just off the Eddsworld YouTube channel, there exists a video simply called Eddsworld Climate Change, TVE Global Sustainability Film Awards 2022. Released in 2009, this animation was Edd Gould's call to action to tackle climate change, which was already considered by many academics to be an existential threat to humans and all of nature. That's climate change the anthropological process, not climate change the Eddsworld video. Eddsworld has yet to be considered a major threat to life itself. It's a great short, one of my favourites. The laughs per minute are as high as anything released in the Goulden years, even though it is without a doubt the most politically motivated thing with an Eddsworld logo. And I'm confident in saying that it's politically motivated because it was literally created to influence global politicians. You won't find climate change on the Eddsworld channel because it was commissioned by TVE, a UK-based non-profit that works with different filmmakers to inspire environmental action and sustainable development. As part of their Million Views on Copenhagen project, they commissioned young filmmakers across YouTube to make videos ahead of the UN's annual climate change conference, which that year was COP15 held in Copenhagen, perhaps the most important environmental summit of the year. According to Edd, the video was going to be shown at the climate change conference. Now, unfortunately, there appears to be no record of this showcase anywhere on the internet, so footage of Barack Obama and other world leaders watching Matt get elbowed in the face might not exist. A real tragedy, I know. Climate Change has about 6 million views on the TVE channel, which is a lot, but I don't think that number quite encompasses how widely this episode has been seen. As mentioned, there's the link with COP15, so there's all the people who might have seen it in relation to that, but clips of the episode have also been aired on BBC News, the world's largest broadcast news organisation. Look North, which is the regional BBC news programme for Lincolnshire where Tom lived, did a report on Edd's short film, and I think there's something so quaint about TVE's executive director selling the public on internet video by comparing its viewer base to broadcast television. You just wouldn't get that nowadays.
Eddsworld has attracted 255,000 views, which beats many children's programs these days on broadcast television.
And if the comments under the video are anything to go by, Eddsworld has been shown in schools. Edd, Matt and Tom have taught the processes of climate change to science classes and geography classes up and down the country. TVE even shared a lesson plan that you can still download on the British Council website, and it involves watching the episode as a class and filling out a task sheet. I think we should give it a shot. What can you use to produce cool air? Greenhouse gases. When temperatures increase, the sea levels melt. To save electricity, you can flood your electrical items. You know, I have a geography degree. I can't get much further in this worksheet without watching the episode itself, so let's finally put it on to see what we can learn. So this episode takes place in a parallel universe known as the 360p dimension, where you can practically count the pixels. Now allegedly, TVE still holds the rights to this episode, which is why this low-res YouTube upload is the only version available, and we're yet to see any sort of remaster, which I think is a real shame. Funnily enough, TVE hired Eddsworld again a year later to promote their biodiversity movies competition, and that one was published to the same channel in full HD. 1080p. Climate Change though, no publicly available HD render. Kudos to this fan project for manually restoring each and every frame over the course of an entire year to serve as a kind of digital restoration. Very impressive stuff. The Eddisode sees the boys enjoying a wonderfully excessive lifestyle. They're watching 9 simultaneous televisions while reading electric newspapers, and they're dealing with global warming by using more electricity to cool down their living room. Oh, the irony. Also, dude, you're wearing a hoodie, just change into a t-shirt. It's not long before they learn that their actions have consequences, and through swift decision making, they are able to mitigate environmental catastrophe. For now at least. Tom leaves us with one final harrowing message.
We do need to seriously consider cutting back on our electricity usage, even if it's just something small like turning stuff off completely before we go to bed. Because if we don't, we are all going to die.
You're gonna die. We're all gonna die.
Ooh, butterfly.
So yeah, the message is pretty clear, even if some of the science takes a backseat to comedy and narrative simplicity. Greenhouse gases don't need to travel to the polar ice caps to do damage in this way, but it's funny to watch an anthropomorphic smoke cloud, and it gets the point across. The day is saved by going green after catastrophe strikes, but in the real world, once we've hit a tipping point, there may be no going back, and any kind of restoration will be long and difficult. As my history teacher told me, destruction is easy, construction is much harder. But again, I can let it slide because it leads to the funniest moment in the entire video.
Well, that's just silly.
And then there's the call to action. The video humorously depicts the boys solving climate change by unplugging a few of their electrical devices before Tom preaches about personal responsibility. Again, this is clearly a joke, but even in 2009, it was pretty clear that individual action was only one part of the puzzle. Like, absolutely, if you eat less meat and recycle where you can, and you don't get around using a combustion car, then you're doing the world a favor. There are ways for you to unequivocally help or hinder the environment, especially your local environment. That should not be understated. But we all know that when talking about an entire ecosystem, collectives of people have far more influence on the planet than you or any other individual. The key to fighting climate change, therefore, is education, combined with policy that tackles greenhouse gas emissions on an industry-wide and nationwide scale. If you want to know what industries can do, you just need to look at renewable energy. Sure, when Ed animated this episode, solar panels and wind turbines were younger technologies. Going green did mean choosing the more expensive option. But we're 15 years in the future. Industries invested in the tech, they made it better, they made it more cost competitive, and now solar and wind energies are cheaper per megawatt hour than any fossil fuel. In the UK, we don't burn coal anymore, and the cost of electricity is as high as it is because the price is set by the most expensive source of electricity, which is natural gas, a fossil fuel. If you're at all interested in climate science or environmental policy and you're not already subscribed to Simon Clark, then his video on marginal pricing is a fantastic place to get started. It explains the whole process in far more detail. As for the role of governments and organizations, they have the ability to regulate polluting industries while encouraging more sustainable development through grants and subsidies and investments. Your government might provide you with a tax cut if you drive an electric car, or they'll cap the price of bus tickets to promote low carbon mobility. They might fund insulation projects to improve your home's efficiency, or they'll encourage recycling by simplifying the whole process. The responsibility to decarbonize doesn't have to fall on you alone. It's a burden that should be shared with your government. All of the schemes I've outlined can result in a better future for the planet, the people who live on the planet, and the economies that keep us afloat. People, planet, profit. Using that same principle, a government making strides towards sustainable development is great, but now imagine a collective of governments working towards that same goal. That is why the Climate Change Conference exists. Even though changes to the climate had been linked to anthropogenic, man-made, carbon emissions since the 1930s, a lot of governments were hesitant to do anything about it prior to COP. Many economies had spent the past century or so building their societies around the combustion of fossil fuels. Electricity to every home, cars in every garage, an abundance of food in the supermarket. That was all enabled by fossil fuels. It's a way of being that many find appealing. Fossil fuels did once bring about fantastic prosperity, and going back on all that progress wasn't just expensive, it was politically inconvenient. But here's the thing. When it comes to an ecosystem as massive as the atmosphere, there are no borders. Climate change is an international issue and a justice issue. Not every household or community does have easy access to food and electricity. Their so-called carbon footprint is therefore relatively low. And yet those communities are more vulnerable to the effects of rising global temperatures, extreme weather events, and all the secondary effects of climate change like higher cost of living. On a global scale, low-income countries so often have economies that rely on agriculture. Unpredictable weather means less reliable crop yield and a more unstable economy. These are clear injustices caused by the heaviest polluters. To put it simply, Ed's house might have been spared, but you wouldn't want to live anywhere nearby. So what has COP been able to achieve? You might be familiar with the Paris Agreement, which was written up as part of COP21. Member countries have committed to keeping global average temperatures to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and the agreement outlines the nationally determined contributions under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities.
What?
Basically, everybody has a vested interest in sustainable development. We all have a responsibility to protect the planet, but some nations have more capability to adapt and more environmental influence than others. The burden to tackle climate change should be shared equitably, with those who can do more committing to do more. And remember all that stuff about inequality being exacerbated by climate change? Well, in recent years, COP has made great strides towards creating a just transition that compensates those affected by climate change and supports developing nations in adopting more sustainable energy sources. We are not making enough progress, it's true. Our policies are not there yet, and even our current pledges and targets place future global warming above 2 degrees C. It's not enough, but we are making progress. Every 0.1 of a degree saved can make a difference. Every penny given to mitigating the effects of climate change can make a difference. The planet we live on is worth fighting for. So why are there people trying to drag us backwards? When Edd made this animation in 2009, climate change was a controversial issue, and that's quoting the BBC report I mentioned earlier. Edd knew how controversial the subject matter was. He knew that people would disagree with his messaging. But that's why he made the video.
A lot of the people on YouTube don't really think it's a real deal, and so hopefully this kind of makes them want do a double check and have a look into it themselves.
Upon learning about such a massive existential threat to the future of the planet, a lot of people might walk away feeling hopeless. It's easy to look at the immeasurable forces working against us and fall into a fatalistic belief that the world has already lost the battle. But Edd looked that threat in the face and he made something funny. He recognized that animation and comedy were tools that he could weaponize in the name of education. To quote Edd Gould directly, most people would rather watch shallow entertainment than a heavy documentary that makes them feel bad about themselves and their future. We hope our contribution will entertain as much as it informs, and gain the interest of a generation which would normally glance over the issue. Speaking as a member of that generation, I don't think we glance over the issue nowadays. In part because we've been exposed to educational content like this on the internet since we were old enough to use a computer. We're living in 2026. Climate change is still real, and there are still people who deny that fact. Even when going net zero has never made more economic sense, even when the science has never been clearer, even when public support for that science is so high, there are powerful people out there who will try to convince you that climate change doesn't exist and sustainability isn't worth fighting for. And they're either doing that because they are misinformed or because they have something to gain by selling you a fake story. Edd saw that misinformation nearly 17 years ago, and he did something about it. In the grand scheme of things, Eddsworld Climate Change is not the most important film about the environment, but it might just be the most important Eddsworld video. It has explained the factual mechanics of climate change to young people at a time when misinformation has never been harder to discern. It's a reminder that individual actions can make a difference, but especially when performed as a collective. It's a reminder that we've changed the planet before, but we can do it again. And it reminds us that while it's easy to be cynical and lose all hope in the face of difficulty, that cynicism might just be the death of us all.